Hello, everyone. We're going live right now. Thanks, everyone, to join us today. My name is Paloma. I'm a leader of the Start Local Go Global program from Founder Institute here in Latam. I'm going to be sharing my screen with you guys right now, and we're going to do a quick intro about what the Start Local Go Global program is in Founder Institute. And soon we're going to be joined by our guests of the week. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Thanks again, everyone that's joining us. This is another event, part of the movement for a new future. We have been working really hard, Founder Institute Brazil, JUPTER, and the embassy and other partners, to make sure that we have resources and support for every entrepreneur that wants to build the future with us. So Startups for a New Future is this new initiative that we have been launching during this pandemic that's looking to support entrepreneurs all across Latin America to create the future after this pandemic. Founder Institute is a program that's run globally. We have been running for over 10 years. It started in Silicon Valley. Here in Brazil, the program successfully started in 2015. We have over 51 batches of acceleration run, over 1,200 entrepreneurs have joined the program, 300 of those graduated the program. So what is Founder Institute acceleration program? We have a 4-month acceleration program that has meetings in a weekly basis. These sessions we call are right now in the digital format, so anyone from any city, anywhere can join them. Either for entrepreneurs that are still in the idea stage, pre-seed, so they are still not full-time, they're still looking for a team and building their prototypes in minimum viable projects. They can join us in our launch track. And entrepreneurs that are still at a pre-seed stage but already have a functional MVP, they already have an early company that has a product and a few customers, they can join our growth track. So we have 2 tracks today in the Start Local Global program that you guys are welcome to join. As I mentioned, during the year of 2020, we have migrated all our acceleration program to the virtual world. This is due to the pandemic, but we're also excited to take off these barriers and be able to bring mentors from all across the globe to help you build your company with a lot of unique mentoring sessions. We call them office hours, with a lot of extra sessions from Founder Institute Silicon Valley and all across Brazil. We have a bunch of cities in Brazil recruiting right now, including Start Local Global. So São Paulo, Ribeirão Preto, Porto Alegre, Belo Horizonte, Curitiba, Campinas, and Salvador are cities that have applications open right now at fi.co/join/Brazil. If you want to build a global company from day one, Start Local Global is your option. The other cities have this semester of acceleration in Portuguese. Start Local Global's main differentiator is that all sessions are run in the English language, and they have mentors and network from all across Latam and the world. Today, we have the honor to bring you guys one of our mentors from Canada. And next week, we're going to have also a Mexican investor with us in the panel. So this is a global program for global entrepreneurs. You don't need to be ready to expand and internationalize. What you need to is to want to build a global company from day one and already think and act as a global company. We have a few fellowships available for the Start Local Global program. One of them is our Frontier Technology. So if you're building a new technology, join us through that fellowship. We also have a female founder fellowship. At Founder Institute, we're really committed to have more female founders in our batches of acceleration. I'm myself a founder of a startup. I graduated in Founder Institute 2015 in Curitiba, Brazil. And it's great to see female founders joining our program. So for every city, across the globe, Founder Institute has one fellowship available to the top highest applicant that is female. We also have a partnership with a few events, NASA Space Apps and Startup Weekend, and I want to talk more about NASA Space Apps in a little bit. If you are building any solution that is in the public health startup sector, if you want to cure, prevent, mitigate any threats to public health, we have just launched through the pandemic a new fellowship to support entrepreneurs in the health sector. If you have been laid off or you're having any challenges finding reallocation of work during this pandemic, or if you're a startup in our portfolio that is growing and hiring, we have created Talents for a New Future, which is a way where people can rethink their careers, and if they're interested, they can join fellowships and become entrepreneurs, or they can join any of our hiring startups in our portfolio Founder Institute. We have over 300 startups across Brazil. Here's a special invite for you that is a Portuguese language speaker, but also if you're a English speaker, we have this weekend the largest hackathon in the planet happening, and Founder Institute Brazil is a key partner of building this event, incredible event this weekend. So it's a totally virtual hackathon that's going to happen worldwide. In Brazil specifically, Founder Institute Brazil is giving 10-star fellowships to anyone that is participating in the hackathon can apply. So if you're looking to join the program, or if you're looking to solve solutions during this COVID times, this might be a great hackathon for you to join. The applications finished today for NASA Space Apps Challenge COVID. So if you're interested, I'm going to send you guys here in the chat more information about how to sign up. Also, for those of you who do speak Portuguese, we have an event tonight at 8 p.m. Talking about the future of health together with our partners at NASA Space Apps. So if you're a Portuguese language speaker, you're welcome to join us there as well. I want to give a special thank to all our FI partners, in specific our venture partner, Bruno from JUPTER is here today, and it's always a pleasure to have you with us. JUPTER has been supporting FI grads all across the globe. I myself got invested by a vehicle in my startup by their investment vehicle. So it's really helpful to have key partners such as those around the globe that help early pre-seed companies to get going. We also thank all our legal partners across Brazil that help our graduates. And if you're thinking about joining the program, we have a specific law firm that helps you incorporate either in Brazil or maybe even in the US or in other countries. All our legal partners are there for you to support you through this journey. Just by watching this webinar, you're already part of this massive transformative movement, which is Founder Institute in Brazil, in LATAM, and worldwide. We are here to make Brazil happen, and we're committed to generate at least 100,000 jobs by our portfolio company. So for you that is embarking in this journey, we are looking for entrepreneurs that are able to solve the problem of at least 1 million people that want to create at least 100 jobs in their companies and that really want to make a change and build a significant company. So welcome to this massive movement. And with no further ado, I want to invite you guys today to join us in this panel with Bruno Ceschin, our director of Founder Institute Brazil and co-founder of JUPTER, and the one that's leading JUPTER Adventures. You guys are going to hear about it today. And our special international investor mentor, Yuri Navarro. Yuri, thank you so much for being here with us as well. Bruno, I'm going to pass the word to you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here with us. So as just Paloma have introduced it as of all, I'm Bruno. I'm the co-founder of JUPTER, and I'm a co-director of the Founder Institute in the chapter. I actually really help other chapters around Brazil into the team of funding and equity. I'm an investor. I started investing in startups 5 years ago. Actually, 7 years ago. But 5 years ago, I met Yuri up in Canada, and I really decided to co-found JUPTER as this platform that can help entrepreneurs to find resources, mentors, and acceleration programs like Founder Institute, and to find investors like us to help them to make a better journey, or at least a less suffering journey with a little bit more of capital during the Death Valley, which is the hardest part to cross over, at least in my opinion, in the entrepreneur's journey, which is very challenging. And I'm very passionate about investments because I've been working in the financial markets for 12 years now. So for crisis after crisis, we are here working and investing and divesting money. So this is not any different right now for us. Things are a little bit, or let's say a lot, shaky right now, but we're very optimistic that entrepreneurs will lead the way and build the future, and the future that we need to exist, but is still not there built yet. So I'm very happy to be here with Yuri. Good to have you here, man. Long time no see.
Good to be here.
Yeah. How are things up in Canada?
Warm.
Warm?
Yeah. It's we're going through a little bit of a heat wave actually right now, with especially in Toronto, Montreal. It almost feels like winter in Sao Paulo.
Yeah. Yeah, probably the winter right now in Sao Paulo, it's even warmer than Toronto right now.
Yeah, exactly. I remember winter in Sao Paulo. But no, it's great. The ecosystem is pushing through. I think there's still a lot of optimism, and so, you know, obviously we'll get into all of that and talk about it a bit more. But yeah, I mean, I think like any other country, Canada has been impacted. People are struggling to stay at home. People are struggling to observe all the rules of the government around social distancing and wearing masks and not going outside, especially when the weather is this beautiful, especially when in Canada, as you know, it's winter 8 months of the year. And so it's really hard when it's summer to not go outside. And so, but overall, I think, you know, the Canadians are responding well, and the optimism is still very high. We're still seeing tons of activity, lots of opportunity. And so, yeah, no, I think Canada is very well positioned in this capacity, in the context of startups and innovation. And I'm excited about the opportunities that the future holds. Not to discount, of course, the pain that everybody is going through, but I think there's a lot of opportunity that's coming as well.
Great, awesome. So the next 15 minutes, we're going to be talking and like just like a normal conversation. And at any point you guys would like to address any question, just feel free to write in the chat. We're going to be picking up a few questions during this time. And while you guys are not making questions, you're going to be talking just like we would normally talk. It's been a long time I have been talking to you. Yeah. So how do you see the international part of investing? I'm pretty sure you know very well Brazil. I've been here a couple of times, or even more than I didn't know. But And you know, it's not that easy for Brazilians to have foreign investors coming in and coming out. Transactioning is a little bit complicated, bureaucratically a little bit complicated.
Yeah.
How have you been facing these challenges on making investments in Brazil, being a Canadian?
Yeah. You mean generally or in the current context?
In generally first, then we go
Okay.
to the
Yeah, I
context.
mean, I think there's definitely challenges. You know, there are large challenges that should not be underestimated in the context of trying to overcome any barrier, but specifically international borders in the context of startup investment. I mean, it's hard for any context to do international investment. I think, you know, we our banks in Canada, you know, who are famous for being conservative and for having weathered the last financial crisis fairly well. You know, they're also famous in Canada for the number of times that they have failed to invest and expand internationally. So you know, it's never good to underestimate the problems that exist. Having said that, there's a lot of opportunity, and I think that the opportunity is a big driver for a lot of the interest. A lot of the people that are looking to invest abroad, a lot of the people that have been spending more time, like myself and some of my colleagues, who've been spending more time looking opportunities that are a little bit further afield, that are you know, in markets that we really believe have the capacity to develop into huge juggernauts of entrepreneurship and innovation. You know, I think in Latin America, there's no doubt in anybody's mind who's paid attention to Latin America that Brazil is the market. You know, it's the majority of the startup market. It's the majority of the investment market. You know, it has a lot of advantages to it. Unfortunately, it also has some disadvantages as well in terms of regulation, in terms of, you know, the difficulty of setting up a business, of setting up a fund, for example, also quite difficult to do. And so, you know, up until now, what we've seen is, you know, I'm somebody that has been going to Brazil now for over 5 years, maybe 7 years now. I've gone half a dozen times at this point in time to check it out and get to know the community and the investors. And I've been optimistic and bullish about Brazil really for the last, you know, 4 years. I've been talking to people, 5 years maybe even, I've been talking to people about the opportunity to invest in Brazilian companies and work with Brazilians. I think that the issue becomes, you know, in good times, the risk is worth it, right? Dealing with the bureaucracy, dealing with the regulations is worth it. And so you've seen in the last year or two, more and more international outfits making huge bets on Brazil and Brazilian startups. You've seen an increase in Y Combinator accepting international founders, but also a lot more Latin American founders in particular. A lot of good stories around Latin American founder teams. You've seen Sequoia and Andreessen spending more time in Brazil and making investments alongside you know, other funds in Brazil. Those are all very important things. Of course, you know, we saw last year one of the big announcements was SoftBank making commitments of billions of dollars to Brazil. You know, of course, SoftBank has had its own problems, and so we'll see what that amounts to. But I think what's important in all of this is that the appetite has been driven by opportunity. People see the opportunity in Brazil. They see the quality of the talent in the companies. They see the quality of the market itself and the ability to kind of drive business growth internally within Latin America. So those are the positives. I think, unfortunately, in this climate, there's a lot of focus right now globally among investors to focus on existing portfolio and existing companies. And that, in essence, means that funds are turning internal. They're focusing about the problems that they have today. and less about the opportunities of tomorrow. And as a result of that, I do think in this coming year, we're going to see what went from record highs in Latin American investment, as Lavka was saying in the last presentation. These record highs that were being hit 2 years in a row in Latin America around investment, and particularly in Brazil. I think we're going to see that decrease for sure. I think there's going to be probably less appetite among investors to invest in foreign companies, unless if those companies can really stand out, unless those companies can really make themselves make the case for why they are different. And part of that may be showing that they have the capacity to go beyond just the Latin American market. And I do think that that on the other hand, there has been an awakening of Brazilian capital that's happened. So because of all the foreign capital that came in the last couple of years, there has been an awakening of Brazilian capital. And I think that will probably continue to invest. I am expecting that many of the private equity groups and family offices, of which there are many in Brazil, will continue to deploy in these times and in these conditions. But for sure, there's a little bit of a freeze right now on fundraising for many funds, mostly because everybody's still trying to understand where this is going to end. I think a lot of people, I don't think it's a long-term thing that people will not be investing, but I think that while there is this uncertainty, you're hearing a lot more funds decelerating activity globally. I expect it's the same in Brazil, though I haven't recently spoken to Brazilian funds. I think that LPs will, limited partners, the investors that invest in funds, they will probably be accelerating in their investments in the longer term. Mergers and acquisitions will probably go up in the kind of next 12 to 24 months. But right now there's a period of everybody's waiting to see. And so probably the next 6 months is very slow on the investment front. And especially as it relates to cross-border investment, because of what I said before, which is, if you're a foreign fund or a foreign investor, probably most of your portfolio is in your home market or in the US or Israel, the major markets, London. And so if you're doubling down on your portfolio, you're probably doubling down on domestic investment as well. So these are all kind of just general trends that I can throw out there. In terms of what I'm thinking is reasonable to expect is going to happen in the next little while.
Sure. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Looking from a domestic perspective, we've been making a very deep research with the local VCs and local angels to understand what they're thinking and what are the the biggest probability of next moves, if you can say so, and taking into the consideration the basic scenario is the following: angels are probably will be much more out of the market for the next 6 months, because the money from an angel, it has probably much others priorities. They're like his own home, his own. Maybe he wants now a bigger home because he's like more inside his own house. Maybe he needs to put more money in his own business. Not all angels are tech investment onlys. There may be entrepreneurs too. Yeah. They may have to put their money into their own house or their
own business. Yeah.
It happens a lot. So we can see angels decreasing in the short term.
The other thing to understand about angels is that I'd say many of them are investing the money that is left over.
Yeah.
So, you know, when an angel invests, they might have a budget and say, okay, I'm going to invest every year $100,000, or I'm going to invest every year $200,000 or $500,000. Well, it depends on the size of the angel and how much money they have. Oftentimes that money is not coming out of a savings account. It's not sitting around in cash. It's money that is usually proceeds from a business, like you were saying. You know, if the business is generating good profits, they have extra cash, they will make investments. Or in some cases, it's actually, if they're not an operator and they don't have an active business, then it's actually proceeds that are generated from their other public investments. And so, you know, every year, if they're making 10% return, you know, they take 5% of that return and they put it into angel investments. The problem is today that, well, the problem is that the markets went down 20%. And so because of that, you know, doing so now locks in a loss. So you, as an angel, you have a choice to leave your money in the market and hope for a recovery. Or if you want to invest in a startup, then that startup has to be able to generate better than whatever the market is going to do on recovery, which is probably, you know, maybe 20%, 30% over the next kind of 3 to 5 years. So there's a challenge, and I've heard this from a lot of angels too. So I agree with what you're saying, which is, you know, generally speaking, angels that are I would say like accredited investors, but not uber wealthy, are for the most part, I'm hearing, going to be stepping away from the market for a little while things settle. Family offices, though, the angels that are you know, much more wealthy and have that capital set aside for just these kinds of conditions, I expect them to be a bit more active.
Oh yeah. Well, family offices in Brazil are still very frozen, like spooked. What's going on? But I hope they're coming back soon. And what I've been seeing is that angels who transform it into super angels or micro VCs, they kind of transform it, the angel activity, into something more professional with a fund, with a structure. They're more likely to cover that gap. But that will likely to be there, like between acceleration and pre-seed angel rounds. We could have some lack of money on that stage. And that's not a stage that I really expect some foreign to cover, because it really needs some, at least use it to require a physical presence or to be close to the entrepreneur. But now we are all closed in a screen, so maybe this changes and angel micro VCs could be more global. I don't know.
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, like, I think they might deploy into micro VCs, and that's often one way that they can do that. Yes, I think we're all getting more comfortable with distance, social distance, in some cases significant social distance, but that doesn't overcome some of the legal structuring complexities of investing in another country. So I think that if a company really wants to fundraise abroad, and even in these times, sooner or later they're going to have to look at whether it's actually moving a team or part of the business to the market where they look to fundraise. They're going to have to look at structuring at a minimum, Delaware Corp, you know, those kind of thing, in order to be able to facilitate those transactions. Because the complexity, especially in periods like this that are very tumultuous, there's a lot of uncertainty. Governments react in all kinds of strange ways. And so if the government already has a reputation for being heavy-handed with regulation, you know, there's fear that all of this change might spur the government to do new things to help, and so this could be a problem. Now, one thing I will say though is that there is a lot of interest in the opportunity side of things. You know, I think that there are a lot of people interested in what's happening in those markets. But I think we have to find a way of bridging the gap. And I think some of the things that you guys are doing with JUPTER and Founder Institute are helping to do that with the kind of the broader market vis-a-vis the Brazilian market. Of course, we have another conversation we have to have, but the latest initiative that we've been working on is trying to help with that as well in regards to Canada Ventures and wanting to work with people like you to bridge the gap and help facilitate for those companies that are in a good position to do it, to help facilitate that strategy, to help facilitate the kind of landing and fundraising in North America, for example. So those are all things that are important. I don't think it's a dead market though. I think that it's just some delays, and I think that things are getting a little bit tougher. Fewer angel investors means lower valuations. Companies need to know that if they have to raise capital now, then be ready for negotiations.
Yeah. And going a little bit further in the latter, Series A funds in Brazil, they have the largest amount of dry powder ever. So this is very weird. I never seen the situation. Of course, nobody ever seen the situation.
I think there's also just more funds and like more big funds in Brazil than there's ever been. It's just part of the beauty of the last 2 years, right?
Sure, and then we can point out for 5 or 10 funds who have raised over $1 billion, and they in the last 6 months. So now they have to deploy. So if they can't deploy in the Series A because they are over raised to the Series A, but they can't raise there, they can invest there because there are no opportunities. They will more likely to go a little bit under the ladder to invest in the seed stage. Most of them already do seed stage. So I expect most of this money to be reallocated into earlier stages funds to cover the gap.
Yeah, I think if there's a problem with the seed stage deal flow, which is essential, they're likely to, maybe focus a little bit more on the seed stage. Depending on how experienced the funds are, though, they might want to deploy strategies that have been deployed already in the US, like, for example, setting up a scout program to essentially empower angel investors with their capital to go and find deals for them. Because the problem is large funds have they're not set up to do early stage deals. It's difficult for them. It's very expensive for them to do early stage deals. And so either giving some of their capital to micro funds, which you see a lot of that happening in North America, where you'll have a bigger fund, will write a check to a smaller fund to have deal flow from the smaller fund, or things like the scout programs. I think maybe an opportunity in Brazil, if that's the case, around kind of later stage funds that are well capitalized. They're going to need, to your point, they're going to need to deploy the capital for sure.
That's why I have a guessing that they might deploy the capital into earlier stage funds instead of deploying themselves, because they would spend too much of their time where they can't, because a fund that puts $5 million into one company may invest $500,000 in another. They can't use the same time amount of the funding of the managing partner to support them. We've been talking to a few players of that stage, and they're for the first time likely to consider investing into an earlier stage with a partner instead of doing it alone. And I hope it works because I believe it could make the ecosystem much better. And of course, JUPTER is launching a fund that could be that. So I believe we could be a vehicle for that.
Yeah.
But it's been pretty hard because I've been pitching this for 5 or 6 years, and now suddenly maybe it's the best time for that, right? And how does it work in the Canada environment? Later stage funds investing in earlier stage funds too?
Yeah, I mean, there are a few fund of funds in Canada, not that many. There are family offices that are pretty active in the startup stage that have been deploying using the same kind of strategy, deploying into earlier stage funds. There are some funds in Canada that make a regular point of deploying capital into earlier stage funds as part of kind of gaining deal flow. But similar to in Brazil, you know, in the last 2 years, there have been a number of 500 million billion-dollar funds that have launched that, you know, closed only in some cases months ago, and they're eager to deploy. They understand that there's going to be a problem with seed stage deal flow if everybody at the seed stage pulls back their investment, and so you're starting to see a lot more appetite to deploy into micro funds. You're starting to see you know, venture partner programs and scout programs being set up. So these are all good things, I think. You want to have a mixture of different strategies being deployed in any ecosystem for it to be healthy. So I think these things are good in combination. But yeah, I mean, I'll say it's funny because it depends who you talk to. I've actually been working on doing a survey myself of the VC community in Canada for one of my corporate investment clients. Because among many things that I do, you know, Panache and Canada Ventures, I also work for a corporate VC, a big, I'll say a very large multinational corporate VC that is. And I've been doing basically a bit of my own study around the sentiment and strategies of the VC community in Canada, and yeah, I gotta say it's very different depending on who you talk to. Some funds are seeing no slowdown in either deal flow or fundraising for their funds, and other funds have basically just said we're not even going to bother fundraising until 2021. And so, you know, the net result is going to be, of course, there's going to be a slowdown because even if only some of the funds slow down, it's still going to cause, you know, a slowdown. It's going to cause values to go down. But it's working. I mean, I think there's still a lot of optimism. Like in Brazil, we had record years of, I think we had 4 record years in a row of fundraising and investments in the VC community in Canada. They haven't reported the final 2019 numbers yet for CVCA, but to give you some context, in 2018, total VC investments in Canada totaled 3.7 billion in 2018. In 2019, in the fourth quarter, they were already 4.7 billion in the third quarter. So I mean, there was still one more quarter, and everybody knows that the fourth quarter of last year was one of the most active we've ever had. And so, you know, the numbers for sure for 2019 were like up here. Now the question is, how is 2020? You know, what's that going to mean for the ecosystem? But everybody's still very optimistic, and there's a lot of money to go around. There's a lot of capital, big funds that have closed, and so I don't expect. I expect things to slow for a period, but then I expect things to ramp back up afterwards, and it's exciting. It's exciting times. Those are the opportunities are built. You know, some of the best companies of today, you know, some of the unicorns of today were founded or really made their market in tough economic times, whether that be 2001, 2008. So the next batch of unicorns is coming out of 2020.
Yeah, for sure. And solving very different problems that we didn't used to have, right?
Yeah.
So what's booming in Brazil? It's health tech, of course, but mental health it's like the largest amount of funding rounds. It's huge. I've been from 5 companies funded in the last 1 month that I saw. I guess it was 3 of them was mental health. And how do you see this trend what kind of startups we're going to be investing in 2020?
Yeah, I mean, definitely been seeing an uptick in companies and fund interest related to digital health, mental health. Digital health, consumer health, and telehealth. I haven't seen too much mental health, but I do know a few companies in that space that are pretty good. And I think I could definitely see the opportunity, especially with everything that's happening with everybody being locked down at home. So that makes a lot of sense. I think we're expecting to see a lot of companies that are in the technology for the food industry, technology for the health industry. These companies are going to do very well over the next little while. Those are the obvious ones. I think anybody that is in remote work as an industry or collaboration software are going to do very well. Anything like every startup is going to need better tools to manage a remote workforce because, right now we're all being forced to have our workforces remotely. But the forcing mechanism is going to also cause a lot more comfort with working remotely. And that means that, and we're already starting to see this in the Valley and even in Canada with some companies announcing that they're going to be giving up office space and reducing their office footprint and sending everybody home to work from home. And so like this is a big thing. I see a huge trend around that. Mobile tech, anything related with mobile is going to be huge. Cloud computing is going to be huge. 5G, unless if they somehow prove that it has something to do with coronavirus. 5G is going to be a huge opportunity because all these people working from home and requiring much greater bandwidth for their companies are going to drive a lot of the demand around 5G, I think now. So this is these are all very interesting areas. Beyond that, e-commerce is going through the roof. Shopify is now the most valuable company in Canada. More valuable than the Royal Bank of Canada now. So
it has been co-founded by a very young guy, right?
Yeah. Co-founded by two guys. One of them is no longer operational and is an active LP, by the way. And then the other one is running the company still. It's a fantastic journey. It was a Canadian immigrant from Germany who founded the company and built it first for a skateboard shop to serve his e-commerce needs. And then, so many friends wanted to use it that he just realized that there was more money in the e-commerce software than there was in the selling skateboards and snowboards. And so, very successful company. They just announced a major pivot into having their own financial services card now. So they're becoming a financial services firm now. So lots of interesting stuff there. I do think Shopify has a ton of growth potential. It is the one company, frankly, that is giving Amazon a run for its money and giving probably the most existential challenges to Amazon at a global level right now, which is why I think they're so highly valued. So very, very interesting times from that perspective.
Yeah, very interesting. The banks of today are pretty different from the banks of yesterday, right?
Yeah, it'll keep changing. It'll keep changing.
Yeah, it will keep changing. It's happening a lot here too. Fintechs are most of them booming. Banks are getting devaluation, and it's not coming back. It doesn't look like it's coming back. I've been seeing the Itaú, Bradesco stocks are pretty low, and people here in Brazil actually, the younger tends to think that a bank like Itaú would never go broke, but giants can fall, right?
Yeah.
You see this happening in Canada too, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we don't know, who's going to fall and who isn't going to fall. I don't know in Brazil, but in Canada, the government has been pumping a lot of liquidity into the market, pretty effectively to make sure that people don't default on their mortgages or their debt, and that the banks survive, and that the businesses have a chance to strategize and recover. But eventually the situation is what it is. Revenues are down. There's a lot of unemployment. There's real estate is going to be impacted hugely, which has been a big driver of economic growth in Canada. Oil is, I think, never coming back at this point in time. And so, that's a big driver for Canada. So it's going to be interesting. Like, what it means is that Canada now is going from using technology as a future planning strategy to develop what is going to be the future of the country, to now having to say, okay, whether we like it or not, the future is now. We have to make this our priority today, not in the future. And so that's gonna be good for anybody in the startup scene. It's going to be good for technology companies, but it's going to cause a lot of change. And then, change can always be scary.
Yeah, sure. It's happening all around.
Yeah.
We're all 100% digital, liking it or not, right?
Yeah.
And it's definitely not coming back. And we can have lots of doubts about this crisis, but we have at least one certain: we're going to be much more digital.
Yeah. I don't think there's any world where that's not going to happen, despite whatever concerns people might have about 5G or Bill Gates or any of that stuff.
Yeah, sure. That's a funny thing, that the potential solutions are being treated as the potential threats.
Yeah.
But okay, let's get back to the international thing. How do you think that we can make it work to Brazilian companies to raise money from Canada, and which stage? How should we proceed in terms of legal, regulatory? Should they open a company in Canada that holds the company in Brazil? Should we use Delaware, or how should we do it to make it perfectly transactionable? Because I've been seeing you guys struggle on trying to put money here, and we don't want to anymore to be taking that risk of not getting the money of someone who wants to put the money in.
Yeah, so on the one side, it's there's a legal regulatory kind of considerations, and on the other side, it's I would say that there's a relationship issue, right? So on the one hand, on the legal regulatory side, I mean, if it's a clean deal with a clean cap table, you're typically not going to have too much problem. If you're incorporated Delaware Corp or even Ontario Corp in North America, Delaware Corp, of course, is the one that's the most understood and the most well known. So a lot of people use that. It's fine to use that. Obviously, if you have a Delaware Corp and you never set foot in Delaware, that's a little bit strange, but people do that all the time. The other one that's probably second to Delaware Corp, from a Canadian context anyways, is Ontario Corp. Again, the most well-known, the most well-used kind of structure, very simple to do. Setting up a company in Ontario takes $200 in about 30 minutes of your time, and you have a company in Ontario. So,
I'm in right now. I want to be there.
So it's pretty straightforward from that perspective. I think those things are important to address any issues related to regulation, IP ownership, all that kind of stuff. One thing that's important, though, if anybody's kind of looking to set up a Delaware or Canada Corp that is owns, for example, the Brazilian Corp, one of the things that would be really interesting in that process is IP. So if there is IP in the business, figuring out a strategy to protect that IP, again, from being impacted by Brazilian regulations and all that kind of stuff. So sometimes what is required is that even if the operating company is in Brazil, the ownership of IP and all the major assets be owned by the Canadian company or the Delaware company. So usually you should get a lawyer to help with that, to do it properly. If the company is just a shell in Canada, and I've seen this done before too, where the company is just a shell in Canada and everything is still owned and operated and regulated by Brazil. It's no different than just writing a check to the Brazilian company as far as the investor's perspective. So this doesn't accomplish the goal. So these are areas where, when in need, get advice from a lawyer. But that is something to consider. But the bigger issue is really relationships. And I think I would phrase the challenge as such. I think in the past, the biggest challenge to getting foreign investors to invest in Brazilian companies has been that they don't know the Brazilian companies, they don't know the Brazilian ecosystem, and they don't know Brazilian investors. And so, it's very hard, to make an investment in a company that is far away from you, in a market that you don't understand, with regulations that you don't understand, and there's nobody there that you trust that can help you. And so this is always been a big problem. Again, in the last little while, it's been overcome because there's been so much interest in Brazil, and the upside potential, greed has taken over, and people have basically said, okay, we'll figure those things out later. We're going to start investing in Brazil. That's going to change now with the market, and especially with the internal focus of a lot of the funds and VCs. It's going to change now. It's going to be a bit more like before, where to really get attention from a US VC, you're going to have to go visit them in the US. You're maybe going to have to move your company to the US. Moving to the US is very difficult these days, unfortunately, because of Donald Trump and what's happening there. And so these are all challenges that will make it difficult for that relationship to really take hold. But it's not impossible. There will still be many cases of where people will do it successfully. I think that if it makes sense, if it makes sense for the company's strategy to, for example, expand into North America, or maybe they already have sales in North America and have already been growing, their revenues in North America, maybe the next step is to actually set up an actual team in North America, whether that be one of the co-founders to go there and set up the team, and incorporate a company in Delaware or in Ontario, for example. I think that there is some opportunity there, and that's a lot of the way that we're thinking about Canada Ventures. We do think we're big believers in the international talent and in the additional opportunities, but we recognize that doing it remotely isn't going to get you to the goal. In terms of fundraising or in terms of sales necessarily. And so I think that one of the things that we're trying to encourage people to think about is maybe coming to North America. And if US is not an option, then maybe thinking about Canada as an option, to come and get set up here, get oriented with the VC community, get oriented with the customers, depending on if you're selling B2B or enterprise, for example. Very important to get to know the customers very well. If you're selling B2C, it's less of an issue, but I think generally speaking, B2C companies are going to be negatively impacted by COVID-19. And so, most of the opportunities right now are on the enterprise side of things. And so, if you have an enterprise company and you want to continue to grow it, or you want to maybe think about expanding it into North America, that's where we're trying to position to help. We think that, first of all, we're seeing a lot of appetite from corporate America, corporate Canada, in terms of buying new technologies, investing in companies, and also being customers of new technologies, especially for core business functions, things that they can't do without. These are very important kind of aspects of their business, and there's a lot of hunger and appetite. And to the extent that they can get here, well, getting here is the relatively easy part. Yes, there are immigration concerns, but those can be overcome. There are programs for that. Yes, you need to understand the business culture and the climate and all that kind of stuff. Those are relatively easy to overcome too. The real challenge is getting the credibility in the market when you get here. Essentially having good partners in the market that can connect you to the venture capital ecosystem, that can invest in you themselves, that can help you land that first customer to kind of make that transition easy. That's how we're thinking about what we're doing with Canada Ventures. And we're very excited about looking at Brazilian opportunities and looking at companies that fit our criteria and getting them to come and work with us here in Canada.
Awesome. We're finally making it happen 5 years later. And it's happening. And I'm not sure if you know, but Nima's up there.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. We haven't hung out because of social distancing, but we should.
Awesome. And this is the time to make Jupiter to become a Canadian company finally too.
Well,
Always.
and I'm very excited about getting, we have other conversations to have, but I'm very excited about working with Jupiter on some of these projects and replicating the success, because I think if we can do this successfully here in Canada, there's totally an opportunity to do it in Brazil too, in the Latin American context. So this is a huge opportunity.
Yeah, and we wanted to do business with you guys and with Canada since day zero, as we were born in Canada in that trip that we've been there. And actually, the name of Jupiter, it's some sort of a play with Mars, which is up there, and it's Jupiter in the south and Mars in Canada. So there's a lot to be that we can do together. So we have a question here from Rafael, probably. Yeah, Raffaello. Yeah, he's from our team, from Jupiter Adventures.
Yep.
Would you be willing in the future as a Canadian to invest in early stage companies in Brazil for the right VC and people to guide you? Or would you still only trust a company in the US or Canada or represented by a renowned investment bank as a minimum condition?
So in the Canadian context, typically we don't trust investment banks. The perspective of an investment banker or a market dealer is very different than of an investor that's putting capital at risk into a company. Yes, there would be willingness to invest in Brazilian companies. I think generally speaking, there are people that would be interested in investing in Brazilian companies. The problem is, again, as I mentioned before, if you don't know the company and you don't know the market and you don't know any investors that you trust there, then you won't do the investment. The way to overcome that is to essentially build relationships with investors that you do trust. And this might be micro VCs, it might be VCs or angel investors that you have built a relationship with, have done investments with. And of course, on many trips that I've been going down there, I've been building these relationships. And yes, would I, just to be clear though, the barrier on the trust side is not getting advice from somebody. Advice is free. We wouldn't want to be, and I think any VC from a foreign market would think of it the same way. We wouldn't really want to be in a position where we're trusting somebody's free advice to deploy our expensive money. So the minimum requirement is usually co-investment. So we're not just looking for people's advice, we're looking for people who are investing in the company, are putting their own money where their mouth is. And if they, think it's a good idea and can help us through the diligence process to get to know the company and get to know the market and the complexities and the regulation and all that kind of stuff, that checks one box. The other box that still needs to be checked is that, basically, they need to be willing to manage the relationship with the company going forward. The foreign investor is not going to be able to manage that relationship very effectively from abroad. So in order to manage the relationship, one of two things have to happen. Either the company has to come to Silicon Valley or to Toronto, wherever the fund is, and then that solves the problem. And this is what we were talking about earlier. The other approach, which has also been happening recently, is the fund who's co-investing with the foreign fund takes a lead role with the company and essentially acts as an intermediary. And this works to some extent, I think, for the bigger funds, the larger funds who are only deploying a very small amount of capital internationally. This is good enough for them. But eventually, I think in almost all cases, if the company grows and if the company becomes successful, the intention is almost always to then have a more direct relationship with the company. So that usually means, the co-founders end up moving to within reach of the market, at least, that the investor's in.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I also believe in the co-investment thing. Like I have to believe where the money of other person are always believing, also believing. So yeah, co-investing would be the thing to give the signaling. And someone needs to lead the relationship. That's very important for us too. And we've been managing a few relationships as investors here, but we also always ask and require for the companies to raise from other investors so we can decentralize our impact and invest in a larger amount of companies.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's basically the thesis of our new fund. It's a $20 million pre-seed fund to fund the companies from the Founder Institute network, not only graduates but also the mentors, because some mentors they're so good, like creating a company, then they want to restart and build another one, but then they are already our mentors from our network, so no big deal, we can invest in them too. And bridge these people, these founders, with our community of investors, and to follow on and keep investing them in the later stages too. And we're in the middle of a digitalization where we are bringing what we call the adventures. That's what we call JUPTER Adventures, which is automated system to basically release the investments instead of just my random opinion, because I'm very moody and I can change my mind from today for tomorrow. So bringing a little bit more of data-driven decisions to this very subjective knowledge area and investment areas that we're talking here. So thank you everyone for being with us. We're done by 6 p.m. here. Thank you a lot, Yuri. You're free to say final considerations.
Yeah, no, thanks again for the invitation. I mean, I always enjoy chatting with you, and I always enjoy engaging with the Brazilian market. I can't wait to be back there. By now I would have been back there already if it wasn't for COVID-19. So who knows when I'll be back there at this point. But I really look forward to it, and I'm sure we'll be able to sooner than later share some caipirinhas down there together. Beyond that, I'm very excited about the opportunity. I think despite the challenges, I think there is going to be huge opportunity in the coming months, and to the extent that that companies are interested in learning more about what Canada Ventures does, don't hesitate to reach out, and don't hesitate to send companies our way too that you think could benefit from our advice. And then maybe what we need to do is you, me, Bruno, and I'm forgetting his name. He's not gonna forgive me for this. Nima. And Vahid and everybody, we should get together on a call and talk a little bit more about how do we align our strategy with your strategy. I think it's good. Oh, and one last thing, I have to say this because you're putting it in my face the whole time. I need one of those T-shirts.
Paloma just said they're really incredible. They're dry fit, and it's actually made by one of our portfolio companies called Udemy.
Okay.
Not sure if you met that one. They've been graduated in the Founder Institute of Adeo Restes class.
Nice.
In Silicon Valley, but he's a guy from Curitiba, and
nice.
and actually you just upload your logos, and they create all the swags, merchandising, 100%. You can do from for your companies. They're becoming a SaaS that all your portfolio companies can use and can make the swags in a very easy way. That's someone is sending.
Okay, well that's pretty cool. It sounds like a pretty cool company. I just somebody shared the link, so I pulled it up on my screen, and I'll take a look later. Well, but I want one of your JUPTER ones because those look really cool.
Yeah, I'm gonna type. So our store, it's ub.co/JUPTER, I guess.
Okay.
And you can actually see all of our merchandising there. But I'm gonna make sure I'm gonna send one for your home.
Okay, sounds good. I'm a medium, or yeah, medium or large, but medium usually. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you
And
all.
I can't wait to talk again. Okay.
Okay. Sure. Let's stop.